Welcome to Civil Society. Today we're talking about the digital divide in Central Texas. Right now, a majority of Austin residents have access to computers and the internet, and most of us are logging in on a daily basis, specifically with mobile technologies at our access. But there is a segment of the population that represents the digital divide. These are people who do not have access to or knowledge of how to use computers and the internet, making it harder to get a good job, to have access to social programs, or even just keeping in touch with family to make ends meet overall. So today we're going to talk about what Austin is doing to close that gap on Civil Society. My first guest today is Juanita Budd, Executive Director of Austin Freenet. Welcome, Juanita. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to show a little bit of a video about what Austin Freenet does so that we can get this conversation started.
At the very beginning, when I first came to Austin Freenet, I really didn't have much skills at all.
I feel empowered because I could type.
Little by little, over time, I just picked up the skills.
I learned the computer much better. My typing picked up. I went and took a CDL class.
So I got certified.
Much better job.
And I picked up a 2-year contract.
I could search the web.
It's a great place to come because if you don't know the computer process, there's people there that are always willing to help you with a smile.
I could get one-on-one help. And this is available. They're here for you.
They're just free.
Someplace where I can be me. I'm very proud of myself.
Austin Freenet did change my life. You just got to get up and do it.
I think Austin Freenet is awesome.
So, Juanita, I am happy to see the work that Austin Freenet is doing, and I appreciate everything that you're doing, especially because right now Austin seems to be doing better than most other cities in terms of the number of people that fall into that crevice of the digital divide. Can you talk about how you started this and where you've taken it so far?
So Austin Freenet has been in existence since 1995 thanks to the City of Austin and their efforts to understand this need for digital equality and digital literacy. Austin is very fortunate, but still there's 55,000 people who are not digitally literate or connected to the internet. That's not counting Metro Austin, Travis County, and other places that we don't know. So
that's just Austin proper?
That's Austin proper.
I like that you put a number to it because 55,000 sounds a lot bigger than the percentage that I'm thinking in my head is, when the majority of us have access.
Absolutely.
Then you think, is it really a problem?
Is
it really a problem?
It really is, because people assume that you have a smartphone and so you've solved the digital divide, but try filling out an application with a smartphone, try filling out a social service application, try finding friends and family with a smartphone. You can do some of those things, but to really function in a 21st century, you absolutely have to have full access.
So it's quality of life, but it's also access to the basic things that we need in the community to live.
Absolutely. Think about the things you do every day. What do you not do now using your phone?
Sure.
We find how to get from point A to point B using Google Maps or Waze. We go to the grocery store and know which aisle to go to. I mean, it's everywhere.
So what kind of a role does education play? And I don't mean just for students, but even for elderly people, for people in midlife and their 20s, where does education come in terms of fighting this problem?
I think it's really critical that the whole community, including businesses, students, children, understand this. Think about an Austin Independent School District where they're giving children assignments online.
Yes.
They assume that every parent in every household has internet access, and then the same children who fall behind are falling behind because they go home and they don't have access to technology or computers. And so it's a global issue. Then our educational system is dummied down because a group of people don't have access, and we're not competing in the global market like we used to.
So how did you get started in this? What drives you personally Because you're carrying the flag, not just for our city, but for all people that are dealing with this. Where does that come from for you?
I appreciate that. I have to say at the beginning, I didn't realize the problem was this massive at all. I used to do nonprofit with other organizations, and I came across Austin Freenet, and I thought it was interesting. And then as I delved into the problem and really saw how it impacted people's lives, how it kept poor people poor, how it didn't help with self-sufficiency, it really is critical. Is not only a social issue, it's economic and a civil issue as well.
So where do you want to go next? How will you expand your current projects and your programs to have a wider footprint and make a bigger difference?
I would love to have the support of the community. The city of Austin has been fantastic, but there's corporations out there that could help us promote this digital literacy. Think about a child who's been on technology all their life, but they can't write a letter, a salutation, because they've only played videos or they've only looked at the internet as a tool for social versus economic and educational.
I love that distinction that you make, because it's not just access, but it's an understanding and an ability to bring it to your life in a way that makes sense and helps you further your life and your family's life.
Absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
so helpful.
I can tell you a story real quickly if you don't mind me indulging. Donald was 60 years old, had a new baby. He wanted a custodial job. He didn't want some highfalutin job, but he could not even get an interview without coming into Austin Freenet, putting the application in, and 3 years later he's there and he's a supervisor. So we're really proud of him.
I love that story, and I love that it's a real person. That's wonderful. Thank you. So we're going to bring some other panelists out to continue the conversation, but I want to share a couple of stats with you. 7 out of 10 teachers in the U.S. regularly assign homework that requires use of the internet. Students with a computer and broadband access at home have up to 8% higher graduation rates. And 80% of Fortune 500 companies now require job applicants to apply online, which is a lot like what you just said.
Absolutely. We take that for granted, and we should not, because if the whole community comes out, then we all come up. When we leave people behind, then you see the devastation of higher theft rates and crime. And people want to work, but we have to give them the tools to do so.
Wonderful. We're joined now by Ruben Cantu and John Spears. Ruben is CEO of the Level Up Institute, and John heads up the City of Austin's Digital Inclusion Program. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I'm going to start actually with Ruben. Would you tell us what the Level Up Institute is?
The Level Up Institute is a career accelerator. It's a 12-week or otherwise 3-month program. We work with first-generation college students, maybe students who haven't necessarily gone the traditional college route, or maybe took a couple of college courses but didn't really make it work all the way through. We want to recapture them and then take them through our process where we teach them the core for marketing, sales, project management, and operations through a simulated process and program where they actually come out building a prototype inside of a company. After they're done with us, then we go ahead and place them in a 6-month internship. I like to call it apprenticeship, but let's call it internship for this point, and where they actually continue to develop those skills, harness them inside of a high-tech growth company. So therefore, they have a portfolio that they come out and they can actually apply it in the real world.
Okay, so when you say prototype, you mean a product or a technology-based product?
It depends, because the cohort will be consisting of several different groups, will be companies.
Okay.
They could have a product or a service, so we'll work through them in the process of what it actually takes to take it to market.
So, and when you said first-generation college students, I think you were trying to explain it that people who didn't necessarily take on the first time around, or do you mean the first in their family to go to college?
The first in their family to ever go to college. Okay. I'm a first-generation college student myself.
Okay.
And so when we started looking at the demographic, check this out, Julie. In the United States, there's about 20 million students in college already. Half of them, 10 million, are actually first-generation college students.
Really?
And that number is growing.
Okay.
But check this out. If you were to look at the completion rates of how many of them actually complete college in a 4 or even 6-year setting, what do you think it would be?
I have no idea.
1.1 million, 11% out of the 10 million actually graduate, which means 8.9 million or 89% are left out in limbo.
But how many of those fall into the digital divide? How does that relate to the group of people that don't have access to the internet or understanding of the internet?
You know how they say, as you do small things, you do big things? So it's not just one thing. When you see this group and segment of the population, because I come from that population, it's many things piled on top of each other. And so if we're able to start addressing at least the digital gap, then they get access, then they get the education, and then they can actually move into the higher class and actually not only benefit themselves and their family, but the entire society and community.
Okay, so you're taking what Juanita and John, we'll talk to you in just a second, where they're getting people started. You're taking people that have gotten started and really amping it up and giving them a chance to really excel and to enter the job force in technology if they want to.
To be irresistible to employers, to give employers what they need to be able to take their companies forward and the entire community and society forward.
Who can't get behind that? I mean, to be irresistible to an employer, I love that you said that. John, your office, and I think this is unique to Austin, at least I haven't found many cities, the Office of Inclusion, and I know it has a big long title. You want to tell me more about it?
Sure. The city's Office of Telecommunications and Regulatory Affairs supports a program known as the Digital Inclusion Program.
Okay.
And the program got its start in 1994, and that was the year that the city launched its website. And the city also understood that it needed a vehicle to really maximize the value, the benefit, and the availability of that website to residents so that they could access information and resources that were available on this new thing.
I love that, because who was on it in 1994?
That's right.
Not many, all the early adopters.
That's right.
So what is the change over that time?
So the change over that time is that, as Juanita spoke about earlier, in 1995, the city provided seed funding to help start the nonprofit known as Austin Freenet, and being able to help support the availability of public access computers in our libraries, in our public access facilities, and our neighborhood centers, being able to provide the fundamentals to connect underserved residents with technology access training and services so they can make benefit of what the internet and technology has to offer.
So it's not just access, although I know that's a big part of it, but education and then taking it to the next level.
Right.
How much is this about age? How much is it older people and younger people? I know you're focused on younger people. For you guys, is it mostly older people, or is it mostly younger people, or is it span across?
It's span across the spectrum, because you think of children in school,
Sure.
elderly people who use it as a tool not to be isolated, and then people who are in the working class or looking for work. So I think it spans across the whole
So it's not fair for me to, I think many people think of it as it's older people or younger people, and those in the middle all have phones. But having a phone, like you said, is not the solution, is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I concur with that, and based on the 2014 residential technology survey that the City of Austin conducted in partnership with the University of Texas at Austin, we found that 8% of Austinites do not have a home internet connection. And of that population, we found that 2/3 were working age, with 84% of those individuals having a high school degree or less. And so when we talk about the opportunity for folks to enter the workforce and further develop their skills to get higher wage jobs, that provides us a tremendous opportunity to really support work in that field.
Wonderful. So I know that the city and Austin Freenet are working closely together.
Right.
I hope you're working closely with them, but obviously it's a commonality.
Well, Juanita and I have had really good discussions about it, so we're trying to figure that out.
Good,
Yes.
good. But where does it go from here? I mean, I know you're pushing, you can work with what, 3, 5, 10 people at a time. How do you scale that? Or does the city come in to scale that? Is it the city's responsibility to scale that?
With regard to the city's role, we really value the place of holding the center, being able to really convene.
Meaning the place, the center of the place?
The place of the center, really helping to facilitate conversations, convene an engagement strategy known as our Digital Empowerment Community of Austin that helps support the city's digital inclusion strategic plan implementation, being able to understand what does that research tell us as far as the underserved communities that we want to prioritize, and being able to help support funding opportunities to those organizations that are helping to train and enable residents with the opportunities.
So who pitches in? Who helps in that regard? Because when you tell me there's a group of people, I'm assuming, or is it organizations? Is it corporations? Is it city groups? Who's doing that?
So one of the examples, Juanita can speak to this point, is our recent partnership with the Mozilla Foundation and their Gigabit Hive program. Because of the city's digital inclusion strategic plan, they are now in Austin helping to connect residents with opportunities to provide immersive learning experiences to all age segments to help connect educational opportunities.
As well as other corporations. Google Fiber, and we also work with other nonprofits. Think about Southwest Keys, that's a school in Far East Austin, but they also offer opportunities for the community at night for the parents to come in and learn about digital literacy.
Great,
so
great.
we work in partnership with them. The Housing Authority of City of Austin, also we work with their residents. There's a plethora of people that we may not be thinking of that really need these services to ensure their success.
Well, and I think that's an important point, that these are people that we may not be thinking of. In general, as our daily lives go by and we're all walking around with a cell phone, we all have access. Even when we see people who have a phone, like you've said, that doesn't mean that they have the skills to make a resume, to apply for a job, to certainly not to be in management if they can't use a computer at the basic level. How many centers do you have in the city, places where people can actually go?
So thanks to the city, we have about 7 health and human service sites. Those are neighborhood centers in each community, Rosewood, Zaragoza, St. John's, and we provide computers, access, and training for those people to come in and have access. And then we have other partnerships with places like the Urban League, Refugee Services of Texas, just people who are in need. They contact us, we talk about a partnership and see how we can leverage our resources together.
So you're really blanketing the area, not just Austin proper, but Central Texas as a whole. You're serving all people. Is there a difference between people in rural areas? Because I know we're talking a lot about East Austin and center of Austin, but what about people that are on a ranch or on a farm?
Well, you know, that is really, I'm glad you brought that up. That is really a critical area. We don't have the resources to do a lot of that work, but we do have computers in places like Cedar Creek.
Okay.
We have a center in Bastrop that we partner with, and there are few computers, but we also see the need. We've gone all the way out to Athens, Texas. They have one of our computers, but they use that computer very diligently. So we try to do our best to help. The goal is to then partner with those entities out in further areas to see how we can leverage each other's strengths.
So how does someone in a rural area, and I realize this is a smaller part of the population, but how do they get to the center or to the computer or to the class?
Yeah, one of the interesting stories that we have at the City of Austin is that our Grant for Technology Opportunities program, which is a city-funded grant that any nonprofit in Austin can apply for every year, provides the opportunity for organizations to help overcome barriers. Those barriers include transportation barriers for residents who live far away from where these services and trainings are being offered. So we have an example of being able to help facilitate the ability for high school age students to attend a summer camp that was sponsored by the Boy Scouts of America at Anderson High School. And all of the Title I school students that were part of that program all over Austin were able to travel up there through a bus to be able to attend that summer camp through our funding. So that was a really great opportunity.
And that's really in a similar vein of what you're doing. That's rising up together and educating and putting the tools in their hands or helping them get to where the tools are, either way. What is the trend line? What's happening? Is this a problem that's going away on its own?
In all honesty, I think that certain things continue to repeat themselves just in different forms. So as much as we want to maybe bridge the gap, now the issue isn't so much about, it's still about access, but then it's also about content and how that content's used, who can access that content, and more importantly, as you see with the new FCC regulation that said that ISPs now have the ability to monitor your traffic and then sell it to the highest bidder. So we're seeing kind of this gray area where even though we're trying to get the majority of people on board, we see other entities and our policymakers who are maybe not, looking out for the best interest for the end user.
Well, to that point, I think that's an important point. What do you say to people who say this isn't a problem? I talked to several people before we did this show to just get general community response, and I had a number of people respond with, is this really a problem?
I would
this
say
is a problem that's solving itself?
I'm sorry to jump in, but I would say go to www.austinfree.net and look at the video of Donald. Look at the video of Ruben. Look at the videos of people who had a change in life. Not this Ruben. But yeah, we are impacting people. And when I think about, I think we've done enough, or is it enough? I go look at that video. Or Donald will come in, John sees him with his little daughter, and talk about how we changed and saved his life. If we save one person, that's enough.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, really, the City of Austin, the first step for us to help really communicate the work that's being done is communicating the value of that, providing the awareness to those individuals, groups that have the resources, the skill sets, the capabilities, the support, the funding to really help us to understand what it is that we can all do as far as contributions to understand our place within the digital inclusion paradigm and be able to help elevate the cause because it's very much something that is ingrained in the social equity of our community. And as the Pew Institute determined in a study that was conducted last year, Austin is America's most economically segregated city in the United States. That's a very important overlay when we're talking about this conversation and what it means, especially with the context of those individuals that don't have home internet access.
I like to step in here. He raised a really good point, and under that premise is one of the reasons that we started the organization, because we are, and the gap is only growing on that segregated level. But here's the thing, we've also been voted the #1 city to live in, but also #1 city for startups for a couple of years in a row. We actually are beating out Silicon Valley. So you're actually seeing this tale of two cities. So when you tell people, when people tell you this is not a real problem, they need to look at the statistics and see how this is being overlaid. And if we don't start doing something now, we're going to be in some very difficult situations in the future.
So what does the global digital divide look like? I hear that Austin, we are economically segregated, and that's a significant problem. And we're all working to change the trend line, and our city is doing better than most. But in terms of globally, where are we and where is the world? What's happening?
You know, I do hope that Austin helps lead in this effort and you become a case study or model city. But while mobile proliferation is actually growing and smartphones are growing, the ability for them to actually gain educational content through those processes and be able to uplift themselves has been a journey. Mobile banking is on the rise, but it still has a lot more to go. And so we still have several more leaps and bounds to get there. But I think that if we can figure out some of the solutions that can work in our city, maybe we can actually transplant that internationally.
I have hope for that. I have big hope for that, and I'll ask you about it in a second. I want to share that my daughter goes to a public school. It's a very diverse school, and it's a bilingual school. Everything is taught in English and Spanish. Public school, everything is done with technology, and I mean several times a week she is logging into Google Slides or Google and making a presentation. She's in 3rd grade. She's 9 years old, and she actually, and I teach technology. It's embarrassing to admit, but she has taught me things because they're teaching her so actively, and I'm thrilled to see that because it's a public school. But I'm not on the east side, and I want to know, why is my public school different from another public school? How do you solve that?
Right. The question of equity comes into play, and how organizations that are providing these services really understand the equitable benefit to all populations, all geographic areas, to ensure that there is consistency in curriculum, there is consistency in outreach, there's consistency in value, is a question that a number of public-oriented organizations are grappling with right now. And that is a challenge statement that we need to help to continue to convene conversations around, continue to understand the problem framing of what is going into that, and understand then what it is that we can do as far as solution framing to help implement strategies to help us to understand that
That's
notion of equity.
That's confirmation to me that it is a real problem regardless of what people's emotions are telling them.
We live in a unique model where public property taxes fund public schools. And in that, the legislature just decides in how everything trickles down, and they have the Robin Hood thing that we have here in Texas. I don't think AISD wants to have inequity. I think they're really working on making some great strides. Yeah. However, I think that it also takes those who are a little bit well off to also start understanding that they are part of a larger community where people don't always have all the resources. So if they can start becoming bridges to those communities in East Austin, not to come say, I have the answer, but hey, how can I help? Let's work together. How can I bring my resources to be able to serve?
That's a great place. I'll give you the last word.
And not only nonprofits or the city, but corporations need to invest in their community, and not a one-off, one-time, here's some money, go at it. Because the the problem is continuous, and you don't solve inequity with a one-shot deal. It's a true partnership with an organization that has value, that you've seen the outcomes, to ensure that we uplift this community globally.
Well, that's a perfect place to end. Perfect. And I appreciate all of you coming here today and carrying the flag and carrying the water and making sure that the greater community understands that not only is this an issue, but it's solvable. Or at least you've made me feel like it's solvable, and I appreciate that very much. So we are out of time, but I want to leave you with one final thought. Today, there are more people on our planet who own a cell phone than own a toothbrush. And with such a rapid increase in the use of technology, it is easy to miss or overlook that people are left behind in this trend. That doesn't mean that they aren't out there, ready and able to learn. And if this seems solvable, like it does to us, it is. So let's keep the conversation going. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/civilsocietytv. We'll also post links and information about our guests and their organizations and ways that you can participate on our website at nonprofitaustin.org/civil society. I want to thank my guests, John Spears, Ruben Cantu, and Juanita Budd. Really appreciate your time. I'm Julie Niehoff. Until next time, thanks for watching Civil Society.